Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Well, this week we're talking about something people talk about a lot, the weather, and of course the changing seasons, perhaps more aware of the weather and the conditions that might happen. Joining me is Keith Stammer with the Joplin, Jasper County Emergency Management Agency. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We're approaching spring as we're recording this program, and it's that time everybody thinks, oh no, storms are coming, but really when you talk about weather and weather readiness, it's kind of a year-round concern.
It is. It just changes with the seasons. There's some basic rules that apply regardless of the season. Have a kit, have a plan, and to be informed. And so we advocate to everyone, have a kit, put some few clothes in there and a few food items and some batteries along with a radio and a flashlight, a few things you might need for 24, 48 hours, and then put them in some place that you would go for a shelter. Have a plan, kind of have a family deal or your own personal idea that whenever you happen to need to go to a shelter, your kit's already there, and then to be informed. Stay aware of what's going on. Weather radios are a good idea. Television, commercial radio, apps that we have to our phones, just to be a good idea to know what's going on. May 22nd, 2011, the tornado struck about 5:41, somewhere along in there, but we went under a tornado watch at 1:30, and I was amazed at the number of people that did not even know that.
So really that personal responsibility of watching and being aware of what's happening
well said, yes. Personal responsibility is a big deal.
So a lot of people depend on the warnings from the agencies, now
They
we
do.
have to start worrying, but when you wake up in the morning, do more than just say, oh, it's a beautiful day, I'm going to go. It'll take a moment to listen to the possible forecast.
Please do, it's a really good idea. And one thing I may say about cell phones, we talked a little bit about people having apps and they think, well, I'll get warned by that. No cell phone carrier is going to guarantee the timely delivery of an emergency message. Each cell tower can only handle X amount of phone calls. It's not unlimited. So you get a lot of people that are calling around each other all day long, and then you dump on top of that a bunch of warnings that are being sent out. I've seen some times where it's taken 15, 30, even 45 minutes to get a timely warning out via cell phone. So those are good things to have, particularly to be aware of what's coming. We're under a tornado watch, we're under severe thunderstorm warning, something like that, but not to depend upon them entirely.
So when the warning comes out officially, it'll take a while if you're just depending on your phone to buzz or give you that warning.
It will, and perhaps something just to add a little bit to that is that I've gone back and looked at, I've been here 11 years now, and I went back and looked in the last 11 years at the number of times that we've had either a tornado warning or a warning about a storm with winds in excess of 75 miles an hour.
Those are times when you turn on the sirens.
Either one of those will turn on the siren, right. We're running about 10 minutes from the time that the warning comes out to when it actually intersects with the city and whatever jurisdiction it is. That's not very much time. And so that's it's a very short amount of time in order to make a decision. So
that 10-minute frame, you're looking to the west and seeing what's coming in.
Exactly. Looking to the west, looking to the southwest. Exactly. The storms come from west to east because that's the direction the earth rotates. And as it rotates, it drags the atmosphere, and the atmosphere drags the storms right along with them. And so that's where you're going to get 99% of your storms will be coming out of your west. So
for people, even when they hear about storms in Kansas and Oklahoma, they may want to be a little more cautious because that system might be heading this direction across the state line. That is exactly right. Anything, generally speaking, in the lower portion of Kansas, about 160 highway, right along there, coming west to east, and then look down toward Oklahoma, toward Ottawa County, Tulsa, and that area. Let's just say I-44. Right, it goes right through their area.
My joke is I blame MoDOT for having built that tornado line, but the fact of the matter is it's just a southwest to northeast road, and that's a line that we see a lot of times where the storms track.
Right. And I-44, even in the wintertime, we hear these watches and warnings for winter weather, and it says north of I-44 you might have snow, south you won't.
Yeah.
It really seems to be kind of
it is a dividing line, and it's difficult for the Weather Service, for anyone that is driving. It's difficult for the Weather Service to say, how do I tell you where this storm is when you're out in the middle of nowhere? Most people driving down the road don't even really know where they are, what county they're in, what town they're close to. But if they can say I-44 in south, I-44 in north, east of 65, west of 65, we're even seeing now 249.
The new highway being recognized as a divider.
Many times I've seen where instead of saying perhaps for those portions of the area west of Joplin, they'll say west of 249 highway, because apparently a lot of people understand where that is.
Right. So it's a marker now that people can visualize where they are in relationship to that.
Yes.
Tying that together. So preparation, as you said, being aware. Education's a big part of what you're doing with your agency. I mean, I know that's
most of what I do.
Letting people create that awareness, know what, put their plans, what they need to do.
Exactly. Yeah, education is such a big deal. We have weather spotter classes. We do individual classes. People call my office and say, hey, I've got a church, club, nonprofit organization, fraternal order of whatever that would like to have a weather presentation. I've got one that I can bring out and talk to them. But the whole point there is to educate them about weather. Forewarned is forearmed. And I want people to know as much about that as I do, which is not a whole lot. It's just a lot of experience, but not necessarily a lot of knowledge along that line. But the more we know about what's going to happen with the weather, the better prepared we can be.
And in today's world, you mentioned phones, of course you have television, you have 24 access to everything from the Weather Channel to all these other specialty agencies. Do you find that there are a lot of opportunities for people to gain that information? It's just trying to, where do you go to get that?
Exactly. We have what we call three levels of protection. One is if you're out of doors, listen for the storm sirens. Honestly, what they really mean is that there's a high wind event coming, either in the form of a tornado, which is a violently rotating column of air, or a wind event with an excess of 75 miles an hour. A derecho, that could cover 70 miles width going at 75 miles an hour. So if you're out of doors, listen for the tornado sirens, which means go indoors and seek shelter. If you are at the house, we would suggest a weather radio. And then if you're mobile, we'd suggest some type of an app that would come to your cell phone.
With you.
Those three things should give you a pretty good idea of where you are and what you need to be aware of.
Okay. So once you have these warnings and then need to have a plan in place, if you're in a home, people, what do I do now? I've heard the siren. Or I haven't heard it, maybe I'm inside, but I've heard my radio go off. And the next step is, what do you personally do when you hear those warnings?
If you think about it, there's only two kinds of disasters, natural and man-made. And around here, our most likely scenario is for a natural disaster is going to be some type of storm. Man-made is probably going to be some kind of a hazardous materials release. But it really doesn't matter, because whichever one of those happened to you, you only have two choices. You can run or you can hide.
Kind of the old fight or flight.
That's right. That's all there is. Generally, we call running evacuation, and we call hiding shelter in place. More times than not, we recommend shelter in place. Usually in natural disasters, the old saying is hide from the wind, run from the water. We don't get much flooding at 1,000 feet above sea level. We get some low water crossings, but not what you see. But nothing that you see along the coast. So that helps. So most of our recommendation is that people hide. That is, they shelter in place. Right. Where you are is honestly the best thing that you can do. We're running, like I said, about 10 minutes. You get to thinking about that. I think we've got a slide that shows some of the thought process. But the idea is that by the time you hear the warning, you think about it, you finally decide what needs to be done. Then you grab your glasses, you grab your car keys, you go get grandma, go get a gallon of milk. I'm not kidding.
People will stop at the grocery store on the way to the shelter.
They do. I'm just amazed. And then you finally get to a shelter. It's over. So many times the best thing you can do is stay where you are.
Well, you mentioned you have some slides, and I know we have some
those
available.
Very good.
So let's this is part of, I guess, part of your educational process.
It is. This is part of the slide program. And of course, there's the one, and then the next one.
Next one will show us the next.
Time is the big thing. Everybody has an opinion about the weather. The one thing that I find to be objective about the weather is time. And so we've got 10 minutes of a warning time that's out there. That's only enough time to seek shelter in place. And then this is rather interesting. We've mentioned before. Have we talked about this?
The average date and time.
The
date there. That's
there
very
it is.
familiar.
May 22nd, 5:35 in the evening, is dead center of the number of instances that we've had in the last 10 years in both Newton and Jasper County. And the Joplin tornado was May 22nd at 5:41, and you may as well said 5:35, depending on what time.
What part of town you were in.
When we just kind of picked 5:41 as that seemed to be the date or the time that it actually happened, but it could be any time plus or minus that. So easily half of the storm instances happened before that date, half of them happened afterwards. If you look at a chart, they rise the last 2 weekends of May, and then they start to fall off the first 2 weekends of June. So that's your peak
So May is really the storm month.
May is the storm month. It sure is.
Looking ahead. So,
yeah.
And so as you continue your presentation, we talked about the
those. Yeah. Outdoor sirens,
mm-hmm.
indoors NOAA weather radio, and then cell phones through your app or your text or email or whatever you happen to get. Yes.
And I know those weather radios were distributed after the Joplin tornado. They're still available. People can buy those at stores. You know, if they've
and they're relatively inexpensive. Most of the
mm-hmm.
stores don't try and make a profit on those
mm-hmm.
at all. They're like $30 plus or minus. I think they make like $1.50 or something.
Right.
So we've talked to them before about discounting, and not unless you want to buy about 30,000 of them at a time. But,
now, I know in the past you also offered services for people to set them up, so it'd be specific to their areas. That's still
we sure can. First of all, if you'll go to the website of joplinmo.org, mm-hmm. and there's an emergency management section, and I've got a page there called Weather Radio. Okay. And you can look on that page and you can see how to set up your weather radio. If you're not techie, bring it by any fire department.
And they'll help you get it to the right part. If you live in Jasper County, you'll get the Jasper County warning.
Yeah, sure can. Or if you live in Newton County, we can set it up for Newton County as well, whichever one you want to do.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. We'll move along and talk about the sirens.
Well, some things that the city did after the Joplin tornadoes, we spent about $300,000 to upgrade our system. Mm-hmm. We put some additional sirens in. We installed two-way radio communications in the sirens, which lets us, at 6 o'clock every morning, the system sends out a signal to all the sirens and said, "Are you there? Are you okay?" And it sends back and says, "Yeah, I'm fine." And then once a month, on the second Wednesday of each month, we actually sound them for 3 minutes at 10 o'clock. That lets us do a rotation check. Plus, it lets us do a battery pull to see if the batteries are good or not.
Just make sure they're working and ready when you need them.
Exactly. They sure do. Yeah, we put solar panels on all of them. We found mm-hmm. that some of them, if they drop the shoreline, then the batteries happen to fail. How are you going to get them recharged? And so solar panels help us do that. And we have that remote management software that I just talked
mm-hmm.
about.
So sirens being a key factor, and then the
Big
people
deal.
Perhaps saw some in their part of town they didn't have beforehand. So
yeah.
Going on, we talked about the weather radio in
we
the
did.
city. And
a big thing that the city of Joplin did that you're going to find rather unique in our area is that we spent the money to buy a really nice NOAA weather radio transmitter mm-hmm. that's in top of City Hall. And we now use the same frequency that they use out of Branson.
Right.
And if you look on your radio dial, it's number 7 that's on there. And you can, it's real simple. You just set your radio up and then you start going through them to find the one that's loud. Well, the loudest one is
the closest one.
Is the closest one to you. And it's a very good, clear signal. We found mm-hmm. that there were some people in basements that had trouble listening to that signal. Right. Not now. You can hear that very easily. So you're in the center of town, you blanket the whole city with that signal. We really do. In fact, it reaches about halfway into all of the surrounding counties. Right. So we have excellent coverage.
So the city has invested in that.
I think so, yes.
Tying that together. So we also have the cell phones, which we've mentioned, and
mm-hmm.
of course social media is a big thing. People instantly sending messages to their friends.
They are. If you can go to the City of Joplin website, you can sign up for text messages or mm-hmm. email messages that we send out. Now, we generally send out messages like, keep abreast of the weather, looks like we're under a tornado watch, right. which means conditions are favorable for a tornado, or we're under severe thunderstorm watch. But there's only myself and maybe one other person, and so we really don't act in the position of, if the tornado warning comes out, we're busy.
You're doing something other than say, let's type up a message, right?
So, weather radio or a weather app of some mm-hmm. sort will do that sort of thing for you as well.
Right.
We like the weather apps that are out there, and you can also get things on your phone like a presidential statement, mm-hmm. Amber Alerts, imminent threat. And the neat thing about those is, those are key to the cell phone tower to which you are connected.
Okay.
So if you live in Joplin, you bought your cell phone here in Joplin, you have a local service, and you're driving through Springfield, and they have a tornado warning in Springfield, it's going to hit your phone because you're on a Springfield tower.
So it's going to sense you're in that area. You get
that
warning. Right.
That happened to me in Branson at an emergency management convention. And in the middle of the night, we got the warning, and of course, all of us emergency managers did the right thing. We mm-hmm. immediately went to the basement. And then we did the emergency management thing. We went outside and looked.
Yeah, what are they talking about?
We had our radars out. We were comparing notes and that type of
mm-hmm.
thing. But we did go to the basement.
But you at least got the warning for the place you were
at.
We
got the warning for the place we were at.
They weren't telling you the weather was bad at home. They were telling you the weather was bad here.
Yeah, I really didn't need to know if it was bad at home or not.
Right, right. Then we talked about these different aspects of people, the human element.
This particular slide is most important. Whenever you receive a warning, it doesn't matter if it's the weather warning, mm-hmm. If it's a police officer trying to holler a message to you, if it's your significant other threatening to whack you if you don't pay attention.
These are human steps.
These are human statements. Yeah, the first thing you have to do is hear or receive that warning. Then you understand it, you believe it, you personalize it. Then you're going to go and seek other forms of communication and then decide to act and act appropriately. Now, you don't have to hit every one of those. People, not everybody does. And you may kind of go up and down that cycle a little bit, but that's pretty much the thought process. And people tend to get stuck along the way.
So number 5, a lot of people are saying, I'm going to go look outside myself.
Exactly. They're going to look outside. They're going to go to Snapchat, to Facebook, whatever they're on. They're going to call their friends. They're going to call their parents. They're going to see what's going on. And that takes up a lot of time. And if you hearken back to what I said earlier about the 10-minute time, then we've got a real problem there with you've thought about it. You finally said, okay, that very well could be. And you've checked with everyone and you've confirmed it. And now you decide to do something about it. And you've eaten up 7 or 8 of those 10 minutes.
That clock is ticking away.
It's ticking. It's ticking all the time, yes.
So, and we have another slide. You mentioned the tornado drill.
Yes, it's tornado drill's coming up on the 15th at 1:30. The backup date is the following Thursday on the 17th.
Okay, so now, if it's cloudy and stormy looking on the 15th, we slide it up.
People don't like us to do that.
Right.
Having said that, the state of Kansas and a few others have decided to have their tornado drill at 6:30. Which makes a lot of sense if you think about it.
The heat of the day, the storms hit later in the day.
It does. It is exactly right. And the Joplin tornado was at 5:41, and that's about when most of those tornadoes tend to hit. However, in Missouri, we're going to do it at 1:30 because, after all, it is a drill. So schools, businesses, and that type of thing. But if your weather radio is set to pick up any counties over in Kansas, you might want to be aware that at 6:30 that evening, you're going to hear a weather alert, a test, but even still,
you still sound the alarm.
Still sound the alarm, just like usual. Yes.
Right. Well, a lot of people have plans in place with their families, and you mentioned businesses and schools. Of course, Missouri Southern, we have a plan on campus here for everybody, with the procedures to follow.
Yes, they've been nice enough to invite me over for some of those meetings.
So I'm sure you work with a lot of businesses, a lot of schools to assess, what do we need to do? How can we do those things? And
yeah, we do. Be aware that the storm comes from the west and goes to the east. So the west side of the building is going to take the greatest amount of damage. The best place you can be is inside. Here's the rule. Inside beats outside. Below ground beats above ground. First floor beats upper floors. So if you're outside, find a building. Find some building to get into. If it has a basement, that's great. If it doesn't, then go to the first floor. If you are in an upper floor, like in a classroom or you're in an apartment or something like that, get down to the first floor. The lower the floor off you are, the better. Then get to an interior room. You want multiple walls between you and the exterior. That way, as the storm comes at you from the west and the winds come, it'll hit those walls as it passes by you. If it's a tornado, the winds then come from the north side and they come back toward the east as it rotates counterclockwise, and it will hit the east side of the building.
But you're between those walls.
And you're between those walls, that's right, yes.
Well, Missouri Southern has a new shelter, safe room that was constructed recently. One of our students had an opportunity to find out about it. So at this point, I'd like to pause and just let people see what's happening at Missouri Southern, as we have this new safe room for especially the students who are living on campus.
Most excellent.
Okay, so let's take a look at that package about our safe room at Missouri Southern.
The entire project was a $2.3 million project. Of that, $1.4 million was provided by FEMA, and then the university picked up the approximately $900,000 of the additional dollars. Dealing with FEMA and the federal government is a long process. They were very receptive to it. We had to work with them to see what costs they would work with us on. There are certain things that FEMA will not fund. They basically fund the shell of the building, and so if you want it to be usable for other things, such as we enhanced the air conditioning a little bit because all it had to have was ventilation and things for FEMA. We enhanced the restroom facilities to make sure that it could accommodate 2,000 people. And so that's where the university's cost came in. So it was a process of several months going back and forth working with FEMA, working with our Board of Governors to make sure that we had the funds available for the university's contribution. The walls were actually poured concrete slabs reinforced with metal rebar. The roof is reinforced concrete slabs. FEMA has very strict requirements on what can be classified as a FEMA shelter. And so all of those parts to that building were actually made off-site and brought to the campus and then installed together so that it would withstand a tornado. We tie into the emergency management system for Jasper County. So anytime that they have a storm that is severe enough that they sound the tornado sirens, then the doors of that facility automatically unlock and the students can be directed to that facility. Hopefully they know that they can go to that facility, but then also we have 24 resident assistants and 3 resident directors that live on that side of campus full time, and they would actually go door to door in the event of emergencies to direct people out of each of their buildings to direct them to the shelter. The primary function is for it to be a safe room in the event of a storm, but it is also a large multi-event use facility. I think having this facility, it serves as a focal point, especially for the residence hall students, but also, as we said, Webster Hall, criminal justice. It gives people one location that they know in the event of a storm that they can go to. It gives them an added sense of security, but then it also gives them a gathering space when it is good weather as well. It's directly adjacent to the new quad apartments that the campus built, and so it's very visible. It's right in the center of the residence hall complex. It's accessible to this side of the campus as well, and it just gives the campus an added sense of security and safety during times of storm, but then also a sense of community and gathering in times where we're not having storms or bad weather.
As we can see from that video, the plan at Missouri Southern, a lot of people have also invested in home shelters.
Yes,
this has been
yours
a big
truly
growth.
in corporate. Yeah, did the same thing. Funny thing, I've never had a storm shelter till after the Joplin tornado because we've always gone down to the Emergency Operations Center, which is like buried bunker type thing. But got to thinking about it and thought, why don't we have one at the house? So we went out and bought one. Interesting standpoint here. FEMA establishes the standards to which these storm shelters are built, both individual and collective group shelters. And they're built to withstand 250-mile-an-hour winds. But FEMA does not certify the shelters. Now, your architect may certify that it meets FEMA standards, or the manufacturer may certify that it meets FEMA standards. The one I bought claimed that they did, and they had a university in Texas test it, so I went to their website and looked them up, and yes, by golly, they did. So that was a good thing, just trying to do my due diligence on the shelter. But they don't certify it themselves. That being said, anything that's built to the FEMA standards is good for a 250-mile-an-hour wind.
Which is quite a wind.
It is, yeah.
Now, for people who live in the city limits that have put these in, or even throughout the region, I know you had a registration program at one time just to let the emergency operations people know, yes, we have one at our house. Yes.
If you have a storm shelter, or if you have special needs, or you have somebody that has oxygen, if you'll go to the joplinmo.org website, to the police section or to the emergency management section, there's a place there where you can register. And basically you're just registering your address. You don't have to do name and phone number and that type of thing, but your address, yes, I have a shelter, and here's where it's located. It's out in the backyard. It's in the basement in the southwest corner, some idea. Also, the Jasper County Emergency Services website, JASCO, as it's known out of Carthage, they have a similar type registration database. One of the things that we found interesting in the Joplin tornado was we knew that there were some people that were in their basement, but we weren't sure where.
Basement's a big area under a house.
Exactly. When you have a house that's just been flattened on top of a foundation, you start thinking, where do I dig? Well, it's nice to know where to dig. So please register your storm shelter in its location.
So that's one thing that a lot of people may not, I've got it built, I need to let the neighbors know, I need to let the people know that we have it here.
Yes.
Now, Missouri Southern, you mentioned the doors opening up in the public shelters. I know the schools have put a lot of shelters in.
They have.
And those, theoretically, the doors would be available for people who live across the street, live close if they needed to.
They do, yeah, and that's part of the requirement from FEMA is that anybody within about a 5-minute walking distance, something like that, that is supposed to be able to use those. Again, the only thing I would caution is that you only have 10 minutes. Some places may have longer than that. We don't around this area. And be aware of the traffic. You'll find people that get down to those last 2 or 3 minutes and jump in the car and then drive 70 miles an hour down the street and try to get to a shelter and park askew in the parking lot, and then they try and run across the lot. Your first choice and best choice is to try and shelter where you are. But if you can't, or if you happen to be really close, that shelter is the best place to be. I like the idea of having them right up against the quad apartments here on campus. That's going to be a great asset for those people that are living in that area.
The 3-story apartments, there's something right
You
there
betcha.
for them, help
Yes,
them out.
that's great.
And so forth. So someone who lives in a home, they really just need to decide where in that home is a safe place to go. If they, don't have a basement, a lot of homes in this area may not have basements, but
Most
they still
homes
need to look
don't.
which, interior walls, where's the best closet perhaps I need
A
to
closet or a bathroom, I would look for some place that does not have any windows. Why? Because most of our tornadoes are EF0s through EF2s, occasional 3. The Joplin tornado was an anomaly. The only places we've had tornadoes of that size come through residential areas has been Oklahoma City, Greensburg, Kansas, Joplin, Mo. And we have like 1,200 tornadoes a year, all told. So most of them are small tornadoes, and they pick up rocks and they throw them through the windows. And then people get cut with glass and flying gravel and little pieces of limb and that type of thing. So A, don't stand at the window and look out.
Right.
And B, try and pick a room that doesn't have any windows in it.
So that protects that solid wall is much more protection.
Makes a big
than
difference, yes.
Tying that together. Well, someone who tuned in late and they'd like to have some information, tell them how they can get in touch with you, how they can maybe, like you said, maybe talk to a group or just find out more personally.
Well, yeah, the simple thing to do is you can go to our website and you can find quite a bit of information there. You can send me an email, kstammer@joplinmo.org. You can call the office, 417-624-0820, extension 1261, and visit with me and be happy to talk to you about that, and we can see if we can get something worked out.
Right. And with the approach of spring, I imagine the awareness for people start asking more questions. You
A
kind
lot
of get
more
really
questions.
comfortable in the winter. You don't worry about it till that first thunderstorm rolls through.
And I really appreciate you doing that this time around. We found that after the Joplin tornado, about 3 years, and people start to kind of forget, and at least they're kind of gotten comfortable and decide it's not going to be, and this is the 5th year now, and so this is about the time of the year when people start to kind of slack off and not worry much about it. We recently had a weather spotter class. We had 65 there. I appreciate that. I'm glad. We saw 3 times that many right after the Joplin tornado. So this is a time to be aware, a time to be educated, and to know what's happening.
Right. Well, Keith, I'd like to thank you very much for visiting with us
Thank
and
you.
sharing information
Yeah.
with the audience today.
Glad to help.
You're welcome. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for tuning in this week as we talk about weather readiness and being prepared throughout the year as well as this upcoming spring. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next week at the same time on this station. We'll see you then.